Ladies and gentlemen, there's a belief that often makes people uncomfortable, a truth that can be unsettling, yet liberating. You don't need anyone. Now, let me be clear, I'm not saying that human connection isn't important or that community doesn't enrich our lives. They do. But at the core of it, the most important relationship you'll ever have is the one you have with yourself. So often, we lean on others to fill the gaps within us, to soothe our insecurities, to validate our worth. We think that if someone is there to catch us, then we'll never fall too far. But what if I told you that the real power lies in trusting yourself enough to fall, to know that no matter what, you will be there for you? True strength comes from realizing that your value doesn't depend on anyone else's approval. It's knowing that you can show up authentically, even if it means standing alone sometimes. It's about embracing your imperfections, recognizing your own resilience, and understanding that while people can walk beside you, no one can complete you. When you realize you don't need anyone, you're not isolating yourself. You're freeing yourself from the chains of external validation, from the idea that someone else holds the keys to your happiness. You're giving yourself permission to live fully, love deeply, and fall down and rise up as many times as it takes. Because you are enough just as you are. You have everything within you to face the challenges, the loneliness, and the quiet moments of self-doubt. You have the courage to be vulnerable and the strength to rise from it. And that is your power. Reliance comes from realizing that no one else is responsible for your happiness but you. Vulnerability is not weakness, it is a sign of strength to face the world, knowing you have your own back. You are enough not because of what others see in you, but because of what you see in yourself. Releasing the need for external validation frees you to live a more authentic life. Self-compassion is the foundation for standing strong when you feel most alone. You can love others deeply, but the love you give yourself is what sustains you through tough times. Your worth isn't tied to someone else's acceptance or approval, it comes from within. Embracing solitude allows you to discover who you truly are beyond roles and relationships. Resilience comes from the inside, from the knowledge that you can always rise, no matter how many times you fall. Believing that you don't need anyone is not about rejecting connection, it's about knowing that you can thrive even when you're on your own. True self-reliance isn't about building walls or shutting others out, it's about cultivating a deep sense of trust in yourself. It means recognizing that while relationships and connections are valuable, they are not the source of your worth. It's about understanding that you are your own anchor, the constant in your life, no matter what else changes. We often grow up thinking that our worth is tied to how others see us, how much love we receive, or how much approval we get. We're taught that it's safer to stay close to those who will catch us if we fall. But here's the truth, depending too much on others for validation leaves us vulnerable to their absence. And when they're not there, it can feel like the ground is shifting beneath our feet. Self-reliance asks us to shift that perspective. It's knowing that at the end of the day, you can navigate your own emotions, soothe your own fears, and encourage yourself when you're feeling small. It's not about pretending you're invincible. It's about acknowledging that you have everything within you to face what comes your way. You can feel heartbreak, disappointment, and rejection and still know you will be okay. This kind of self-trust isn't built overnight. It's built moment by moment. Every time you choose to show up for yourself, every time you decide that you won't let someone else's opinion shape your self-image. It's choosing to listen to your inner voice, even when it whispers things that are hard to hear, like the fact that you deserve more than someone who doesn't see your worth, or that your dreams are worth pursuing even if others don't understand them. Self-reliance isn't about needing to be alone, it's about choosing not to fear it. It's the freedom that comes when you realize that you don't need anyone to complete you because you're already whole. It means that while you can open yourself to love, to friendship, to community, you are also perfectly capable of standing on your own 2 feet when those things aren't there. It's not a rejection of connection, it's knowing that your power doesn't come from others. It comes from the quiet, persistent belief that you are capable, worthy, and strong enough to navigate whatever life throws at you. And when you have that, you are truly free. Vulnerability is often misunderstood. We're taught that showing our true selves, our fears, our insecurities, the parts of us that feel raw and uncertain means exposing a weakness, a crack in the armor that could let in judgment, criticism, or even rejection. But in reality, vulnerability is the truest form of courage we can show. It takes immense bravery to admit when we don't have all the answers, to acknowledge when we're hurt or afraid. It's much easier to hide behind a mask, to keep up appearances, to pretend that everything is fine. But when we do that, we also close ourselves off from true connection, from the kind of relationships where we can be seen for who we really are. We build walls that might protect us from pain, but they also keep out joy, love, and belonging. Being vulnerable means allowing yourself to be seen, even when you're not sure how you'll be received. It means taking off the armor and trusting that who you are is enough, even in moments of uncertainty. It's standing up in front of others and saying, "This is me with all my flaws and all my dreams, and I'm willing to show up just like this." This kind of openness is not for the faint of heart. It's for the people who know that living fully means taking risks, the risk that we might not be accepted, that we might fail, that we might face heartbreak. And yet, it's in those moments when we let down our guard that we discover our true strength. It's in facing the discomfort of being seen and still choosing to show up that we find our resilience. Vulnerability is not about oversharing or seeking attention. It's about being honest with ourselves and others. It's about admitting when we're struggling, asking for help when we need it, and sharing our stories even when they don't have neat, happy endings. It's finding the courage to say, "I'm not perfect, but I'm here and I'm trying." When we embrace vulnerability, we unlock a different kind of a power that comes from knowing that we are worthy, not despite our imperfections, but because of them. It's the power that comes from saying, "I am human, I am imperfect, and that's okay." And in that space, we find connection, empathy, and a deeper understanding of what it means to be truly alive. Vulnerability is not a sign of weakness, it's the birthplace of every meaningful experience in life. It's where we find the strength to keep moving forward, even when the path is uncertain. It's where we discover that our value isn't tied to our ability to keep it all together, but in our willingness to embrace the messiness of life with an open heart. "You are enough," these three words can be so hard to believe in a world that constantly tells us otherwise. Everywhere we turn, there are messages that whisper, or sometimes even shout, that we need to be more and more successful, more attractive, more productive, more anything. It's easy to get caught up in that noise and start believing that who we are as we are somehow falls short. But the truth is, being enough doesn't mean you have to be perfect or that you don't have room to grow. It means that your worth is not tied to your achievements, your status, or what others think of you. You are enough because of who you are at your core, your heart, your intentions, your unique perspective on the world. You are enough because you are human, and that humanity lies a beautiful mix of strength and struggle. There is nothing you need to prove to be worthy of love and belonging. It's not about how well you fit into someone else's expectations or whether you check all the boxes society says you should. It's about recognizing that right here, right now, you are deserving of compassion, kindness, and grace, especially from yourself. You are enough means accepting the parts of yourself that you've been taught to hide, the parts that feel messy or complicated. It's about embracing your quirks, your mistakes, your fears, and realizing that they don't make you any less worthy. They make you human. They make you real. And when you show up as your real, imperfect self, you give others permission to do the same. There will always be moments of self-doubt, moments when you feel like you're falling short or that you're not living up to your own expectations. But in those moments, it's important to remember that you are not defined by those thoughts. You are defined by the way you keep going, by the way you continue to show up, even when it's hard. Believing that you are enough doesn't mean that life will always be easy or that you won't have days when you feel lost. It means that deep down you know that no matter what happens, no matter what mistakes you make or how many times you fall, you are still worthy of love, respect, and every good thing that comes your way. It's about trusting that you don't have to earn your place in this world, you already belong. It's realizing that your value is not something that can be taken away or diminished by anyone else. It's something that is already inside you, simply waiting for you to recognize it, to nurture it, and to believe in it. When you truly believe that you are enough, you free yourself from the exhausting chase for approval. You begin to live for yourself, to set boundaries that honor your needs, to find joy in being authentically you. You realize that being enough was never about reaching a destination or becoming something else. It's about embracing who you are, right here with all your beautiful imperfections and strengths, and knowing that's exactly what makes you whole. Releasing the need for external validation is one of the most freeing and challenging things we can do. For so many of us, seeking approval is like second nature. It's woven into the fabric of our everyday lives, from the small decisions we make to the big, life-changing choices. We want to know that we're on the right path, that we're doing a good job, that we're worthy of admiration. And it's normal, after all, who doesn't want to feel seen, heard, and valued by others? But the problem comes when we place our sense of self-worth in the hands of others, making it dependent on their opinions, likes, or praise. We find ourselves chasing the approval of others, hoping that it will fill a void within us. Yet, no matter how much validation we get, it never quite feels like enough because the approval is always outside of us, fleeting, conditional, and often beyond our control. Releasing the need for this kind of validation is not about closing yourself off to others' feedback or becoming indifferent to relationships. It's about shifting where you place your sense of value. It's recognizing that while others' opinions might give you insight or perspective, they don't get to define who you are or what you're worth. You get to decide that. When you stop living for other people's approval, you start living for yourself. You begin to ask, what do I want? What makes me proud? What aligns with my values and who I want to be? These questions become your guideposts, replacing the constant worry about how you're being perceived. And in this space, you find the courage to be true to yourself, even when it means standing alone or taking a path that others might not understand. It's not easy to break free from the habit of seeking validation. It can feel like stepping into an uncertain world where the reassurance of others is no longer your compass. But in this discomfort, there is growth. You learn to trust yourself more deeply, to sit with your own feelings without needing someone else to confirm them for you. You become more grounded, more at peace with who you are, flaws and all. This process also means accepting that not everyone will like you, agree with you, or understand you, and that's okay. It's about realizing that your worth isn't up for debate. It's not something that can be increased or diminished based on who approves of you or how many people applaud your choices. It's constant, unwavering, and rooted in your own understanding of yourself. Releasing the need for external validation allows you to find joy and pride in your own journey, in the quiet moments where you can look in the mirror and say, I am enough, just as I am. It's a reminder that you don't have to strive for acceptance from others to be worthy of your own acceptance. And in letting go of this need, you give yourself the freedom to be truly authentic, to show up in your life with all your heart. Not because someone else says it's okay, but because you know you deserve to be here just as you are. When you no longer seek validation outside of yourself, you discover a deeper, more lasting sense of self-worth. It's the kind that doesn't waver when the praise stops or when someone disagrees with you. It's the kind that stays steady, rooted in the belief that you are whole, that your voice matters, and that you belong not because of what others say, but because you believe it yourself. And in that belief, you find a strength that can't be shaken, a sense of peace that can't be taken away. Self-compassion is about learning to be kind to ourselves, even in the moments when we feel like we don't deserve it. It's a practice that asks us to treat ourselves with the same gentleness, patience, and understanding that we offer to the people we care about. But for many of us, being compassionate toward ourselves is far harder than being compassionate toward others. We're often our own harshest critics, quick to judge ourselves for every mistake, every flaw, every time we fall short of the expectations we set. We carry around this belief that if we just push ourselves harder, if we're tough enough on ourselves, maybe we'll finally be worthy of love and acceptance. But in the pursuit of perfection, we forget that what we really need is the permission to be human, imperfect, flawed, and still completely deserving of love. Self-compassion isn't about letting yourself off the hook or ignoring your mistakes. It's about recognizing that mistakes are part of being human, not evidence that you're unworthy. It's being able to say, yes, I made a mistake, but that doesn't make me a bad person. It makes me someone who is learning, growing, and trying. It's meeting yourself in those messy, painful moments with the kind of kindness that says, I see you, I know this is hard, and I'm here with you no matter what. When we practice self-compassion, we shift away from shame, the belief that we're somehow not enough, and move toward a gentler, more understanding way of being with ourselves. Instead of asking, what's wrong with me? We begin to ask, what do I need right now? It's the difference between berating ourselves for feeling anxious or overwhelmed and saying, of course you feel this way. This is tough. Anyone in your position would feel this way. This kind of compassion creates space for healing. It's like giving yourself a soft place to land when life knocks you down. And in that space, you find the strength to get back up, not because you're forcing yourself to, but because you're offering yourself the grace to try again. Self-compassion also means accepting the parts of yourself that you find hard to love, the parts that are still afraid, that still carry old wounds, that still struggle. It's about recognizing that those parts don't make you weak, they make you human. They're a part of your story, and they deserve your tenderness just as much as the parts you're proud of. And it's important to remember that self-compassion isn't a one-time thing. It's a practice, something you come back to again and again. It's being patient with yourself when you mess up. It's giving yourself permission to rest when you're exhausted. It's learning to speak to yourself with the same kindness you would offer a friend, especially on the days when that voice inside you is convinced that you don't deserve it. When you allow yourself to be imperfect and still worthy of love, you build a foundation of self-trust. You realize that you don't have to earn your own kindness, you are inherently deserving of it, just because you're you. And when you can show yourself that compassion, you become more resilient, more open to life, and more capable of extending that same kindness to others. Self-compassion teaches us that we are not defined by our worst moments, our failures, or our shortcomings. It reminds us that we are all doing the best we can with what we have, and that sometimes the bravest thing we can do is to hold ourselves gently, offering the love and understanding that we've been searching for all along. It's a way of saying to yourself, I am here for you, no matter what, and in that simple promise, finding the strength to keep moving forward. You can love others deeply with all the vulnerability, courage, and openness that it takes to build real, meaningful connections. In fact, we are wired for love and belonging. It's one of the most beautiful parts of being human. But there's an important truth here: loving others doesn't mean losing yourself in that love. It doesn't mean forgetting that your own heart deserves care and attention just as much as the hearts of those you cherish. Deep love is not about sacrificing yourself for the sake of another. It's about showing up fully as who you are while allowing others to do the same. It's the willingness to let someone else truly see you, the messy, imperfect, unguarded version of you, and being brave enough to see them in return. This kind of love can be messy and scary, but it's also the kind that creates real intimacy and connection. When you love deeply, you're opening yourself to joy and pain alike. You're making the conscious choice to risk the vulnerability that comes with truly caring for someone, knowing that there are no guarantees. And that can feel like standing on the edge of a cliff looking out at the unknown, but it's also where we find the magic of connection, the place where we get to say, I see you, I accept you, and I choose you, even knowing that there are no promises. Yet, loving others deeply also means recognizing that you cannot pour from an empty cup. It's knowing that your own needs matter too. It's learning to find balance between giving love and receiving it, between nurturing others and nurturing yourself. It's about understanding that you are worthy of the same care, compassion, and understanding that you so freely offer to those you love. True love is not about losing yourself to someone else's needs or desires. It's about loving with an open heart while maintaining the boundaries that protect your sense of self. It's having the courage to say, I love you and I love me too. Because when you respect your own worth, you teach others to respect it as well. And from that place of mutual respect, love becomes deeper, more honest, more sustainable. This kind of love also recognizes that you can't fix or save others, no matter how much you wish you could. It's the willingness to walk alongside someone through their struggles without trying to carry their burdens for them. It's knowing that your love can be a light in the darkness, but each person has to find their own way through. And that's not a failure of your love, it's a testament to the strength that exists in each of us to heal ourselves. When you love others deeply, it's not about perfection or always getting it right. It's about being present, being real, and being willing to keep showing up, even when it's hard. It's about creating a space where both you and the people you love can be fully seen, fully heard, and fully understood, where there's room for both joy and sorrow, connection and solitude. And at the heart of it all, it's about remembering that love is not a finite resource. The more you give, the more you realize there is to give. But for that love to be truly deep and lasting, you have to include yourself in the circle of care. You have to remember that your own heart is just as deserving of the gentleness, the forgiveness, and the patience that you offer to others. Loving deeply doesn't mean you won't face disappointment or heartbreak. In fact, it almost guarantees that you will at some point. But it also means you'll experience the richness of life, the kind that comes from knowing that you gave your heart openly, without holding back. And when you can love others deeply while honoring your own needs, you create a kind of love that is both brave and boundless, a love that has the power to heal, to transform, and to remind us all of what it means to truly be seen and known. Your worth isn't tied to someone else's acceptance. It's a truth that's simple but not always easy to believe. We live in a world that tells us our value is something that can be measured by external markers, how others perceive us, whether they approve of us, whether they see us as successful or lovable or enough. But the reality is that your worth isn't something that anyone else gets to determine. It's something that comes from within, and it's yours to claim. We often hand over our sense of worth to others without even realizing it, letting their opinions and judgments become the mirror we see ourselves in. When someone praises us, it can feel like a warm glow. When they criticize or reject us, it can feel like a deep wound. It's like we're standing on a seesaw that goes up or down based on what others think of us. But if we let others control our sense of worth, we give them the power to shape how we see ourselves, and that can be a dangerous place to live. True self-worth means stepping off that seesaw. It means realizing that while acceptance and validation from others can feel good, they are not the foundation of your value. Your worth is not a reflection of who approves of you or who chooses you. It's a reflection of your inherent dignity as a human being, something that cannot be diminished or taken away, no matter who might fail to see it. When you stop seeking others' acceptance as a measure of your worth, you give yourself permission to be authentic. You no longer have to shape shift to fit into someone else's expectations or hold back parts of yourself to avoid judgment. You get to show up as the person you truly are, knowing that those who appreciate your realness will see it. And those who don't were never meant to be the ones who validate your worth in the first place. Releasing the need for others' acceptance can be scary because it means facing the fear that if we stand alone, we might not be enough. But that fear is a lie. The truth is, you've always been enough, even in the moments when you felt unseen or unappreciated. Your worth isn't something that changes based on who's in the room with you or who's willing to stay. It's like a steady light that keeps shining, even when others are too distracted or too preoccupied to notice it. Of course, we are all wired for connection, and wanting to be accepted is a natural part of being human. But connection built on the need to prove your worth isn't true connection, it's a transaction. Real, meaningful relationships are built when you show up fully without hiding or shrinking, knowing that you are worthy no matter how others respond. This kind of self-worth is a radical act of self-respect. It's about looking in the mirror and saying, I am enough as I am, without waiting for someone else to echo those words. It's choosing to believe that your value isn't conditional on whether someone else sees it or acknowledges it. It's knowing that your worth is not a negotiation, it's a given, a birthright, and it belongs to you. When you truly understand that your worth isn't tied to someone else's acceptance, you become free in a new way. Free to love, free to express yourself, free to take risks and pursue dreams that might not make sense to others. You become free to set boundaries, to say no when you need to, and to choose relationships that feel nourishing rather than draining. You realize that rejection is not a reflection of your inadequacy, it's just a part of life's rhythm, a reminder that not everyone is meant to see you, and that's okay. The freedom that comes with knowing your worth isn't dependent on others is powerful. It's the kind of freedom that allows you to stand tall, even when the world is unsteady, and to know that no matter what happens, you are enough. You have always been enough, and no one else's acceptance or rejection can change that fundamental truth. Embracing solitude is about learning to find peace in your own company, to become comfortable with the quiet, and to discover that being alone doesn't have to mean feeling lonely. It's about turning inward, learning to listen to your own thoughts, and creating space to hear the whisper of your own heart without the constant buzz of external noise. For many, solitude can be unsettling, even intimidating. We live in a world that often equates being alone with being isolated or disconnected. We're taught that a full life is one filled with constant social interaction, that our value is reflected in how many people want to be around us, how many invitations we receive, how often our phones buzz with messages. But solitude is different. It's not about a lack of connection, it's about a deep, intentional connection with yourself. Embracing solitude is about giving yourself permission to step back, to retreat into that quiet space where there are no expectations, no demands, no one else's opinions or judgments. It's in that space that you get to ask yourself, what do I really need right now? It's a chance to peel back the layers, to let go of the roles you play and the masks you wear, and to just be. When you allow yourself to truly embrace solitude, you start to realize that you are enough just as you are, without needing to be surrounded by others to feel worthy or complete. You come to understand that you don't have to fill every moment with busyness or distraction to be okay. You find a strength in your own presence, a steadiness that doesn't rely on the approval or attention of anyone else. Solitude teaches you that it's okay to be alone with your thoughts, even the difficult ones. It's in those quiet moments that you begin to notice the patterns, the feelings you've been avoiding, and the truths that are harder to face when you're always surrounded by noise. But rather than feeling overwhelmed by what you find, you start to understand that these moments are opportunities for healing, for making peace with parts of yourself that you've been afraid to sit with. There is a kind of clarity that can only come when you allow yourself to step away from the world for a while. It's in the stillness that you can finally hear what your intuition has been trying to tell you. It's in the space of solitude that your creativity finds room to breathe, where new ideas and dreams can begin to take shape without being crowded out by the demands of everyday life. Embracing solitude doesn't mean shutting yourself off from others or turning away from connection. It means learning that you can be with yourself and still be okay. It's understanding that your worth isn't determined by how many people surround you, but by the relationship you have with yourself. It's about making peace with the quiet and finding a sense of wholeness that isn't dependent on being seen or heard by anyone else. And in that wholeness, you discover that you can show up in your relationships from a place of true authenticity. You're not seeking others out of a need to fill a void, you're sharing your time and energy because you've already learned how to enjoy your own company. You bring to those connections a deeper presence, a sense of groundedness, because you're not afraid of being alone anymore. Solitude becomes a refuge, a place you can return to when the world feels too loud, when you need to recharge, or when you simply want to remember who you are without all the external influences. It becomes a reminder that you have everything you need within yourself, that your own thoughts, dreams, and desires are worth listening to. Embracing solitude is a way of saying to yourself, I am here and I am enough. Even in the quiet, it's an act of self-respect, a commitment to honoring your own inner world. And in that space, you find a new kind of strength, the strength that comes from knowing that no matter what life brings, you have the capacity to be with yourself, to be kind to yourself, and to find peace in your own company. Resilience comes from the inside. It's an inner strength that allows us to rise above adversity, to navigate the storms of life with grace and courage. It's not simply about bouncing back after a setback, it's about growing and evolving through our experiences, learning to stand tall, even when life tries to knock us down. In a world that often glorifies toughness and stoicism, we can mistakenly believe that resilience means we must be unbreakable or impervious to pain. But true resilience is much more nuanced. It acknowledges our vulnerabilities, recognizes our emotions, and embraces the fact that life can be hard. It's about facing those challenges head on, understanding that it's okay to feel lost or overwhelmed at times. This acknowledgement is a key part of resilience. It's about embracing the full spectrum of our human experience. Resilience is rooted in self-awareness. It's the ability to recognize our feelings and thoughts without judgment, to sit with discomfort rather than pushing it away. When we cultivate self-awareness, we begin to understand our triggers and our reactions. We learn to identify when we're feeling overwhelmed and can take steps to care for ourselves in those moments. This self-care isn't a sign of weakness, it's a vital component of resilience. It's about honoring our own needs, understanding that we can't pour from an empty cup. Building resilience also involves fostering a sense of connection. We're not meant to go through life alone. When we share our struggles with others, whether friends, family, or a supportive community, we create a network of support that can help us weather life's storms. This doesn't mean we need to put on a brave face or pretend everything is okay. It means being honest about our experiences and allowing others to support us, to remind us that we're not alone in our struggles. Vulnerability is a strength that allows us to forge deeper connections and find solace in shared experiences. Another crucial aspect of resilience is embracing change and uncertainty. Life is unpredictable, and the more we can accept that reality, the more resilient we become. When we learn to adapt and find flexibility in our thinking, we open ourselves to new possibilities. This doesn't mean we have to change or seek it out. It's about recognizing that change is a part of life and that we have the capacity to navigate it. Resilience also grows from a sense of purpose and meaning. When we have a clear understanding of our values and what truly matters to us, we can draw strength from that foundation. In difficult times, we can return to those values as a guiding light, reminding ourselves of what we're fighting for and why we keep going. This sense of purpose fuels our resilience, helping us push through even when the going gets tough. Moreover, resilience is cultivated through self-compassion. It's about treating ourselves with the same kindness we would offer a friend. When we make mistakes or face challenges, it's easy to fall into self-criticism or despair. But self-compassion invites us to approach ourselves with understanding and love, recognizing that being human means being imperfect. This shift in mindset allows us to bounce back from setbacks more readily because we're not weighed down by shame or guilt. Lastly, resilience is a practice. It's something we build over time through our experiences. It's about showing up for ourselves day after day, even when it feels challenging. Each time we face adversity, we have an opportunity to learn and grow. We can reflect on what worked, what didn't, and how we can approach future challenges with a new perspective. This continuous cycle of reflection and growth strengthens our resilience, creating a solid foundation that we can lean on when life gets tough. Resilience, then, is not a trait we either have or don't have. It's a skill that we can develop and nurture. It comes from the inside, from our capacity to understand ourselves, connect with others, embrace change, and stand firm in our values. And as we cultivate this inner strength, we empower ourselves to navigate life's challenges with courage, compassion, and grace, emerging from the experience not only intact but transformed. Believing that you don't need anyone is a powerful yet complex notion. On the surface, it might seem like a proclamation of independence and strength. After all, we often equate self-sufficiency with success and resilience. However, beneath that surface lies a deeper truth about the nature of human connection and the vulnerability that comes with truly believing in your own worth. At its core, the belief that you don't need anyone can stem from a desire to protect yourself. It's a shield we put up to guard against disappointment, rejection, or betrayal. When we tell ourselves we don't need others, we create a facade of strength, a belief that we can go it alone and that our worth isn't dependent on anyone else's approval or affection. This can feel empowering, but it also comes with a cost. It can lead to isolation, disconnection, and a profound sense of loneliness. The truth is, as humans, we are wired for connection. We thrive on relationships, on the bonds we form with others, and on the shared experiences that enrich our lives. While it's essential to cultivate a sense of self-worth that isn't tied to someone else's acceptance, we must also recognize that needing others doesn't diminish our strength, it enhances it. Acknowledging our need for connection is not a sign of weakness, but rather an act of courage. When we embrace the idea that we can both be independent and interconnected, we find a deeper sense of belonging. This means understanding that it's okay to reach out, to ask for help, and to lean on others during difficult times. We can still stand firm in our sense of self while allowing ourselves to be vulnerable in our relationships. It's in those moments of vulnerability that we discover the richness of human connection, the laughter, the shared tears, and the profound understanding that comes from letting others in. Moreover, believing that you don't need anyone can inadvertently create a barrier to forming deep and meaningful relationships. It can prevent you from opening up and being seen fully. True connection requires us to show up authentically, to reveal our fears and insecurities, and to allow others to witness our imperfect selves. When we insist that we don't need anyone, we may miss out on the opportunity to build relationships that offer support, encouragement, and love. Recognizing that we need others doesn't mean we relinquish our power or independence. It's about finding a balance, a dance between self-reliance and connection. When we allow ourselves to need others, we invite them to share in our journey. We become part of a larger tapestry of human experience, where each thread is unique yet interconnected, where we can draw strength from one another. Additionally, it's important to understand that needing others can be a source of strength in itself. When we seek support, we create a network of relationships that can uplift us during difficult times. This doesn't mean we rely on others to validate us or complete us. It means we acknowledge that our shared experiences and mutual support can foster resilience,